We look at the broader result, Jane Hume, you heard your colleague Dan T in there. We thank him and you for fronting up today. It's not an easy day to start looking over the post-mortem when you've barely just lost, but he spoke about the need to keep Josh Frydenberg as part of the future. Do you have any sense of how you might do that? Because he's lost his seat. Where does he go? Does he wait 3 years or what?
I think it's too early to work out what Josh's next step is going to be. And of course, Josh needs to discuss that with Amy and his family and decide for himself too. He's left nothing in the tank, absolutely nothing. He put it all out on the field in the last 3 years. I worked very closely with him. And, I've never seen somebody lose so much sleep at night over the future of our country, particularly throughout those very dark days of the pandemic in March to 2020. So, I think he deserves a break, but he also deserves our respect.
There's been a bit made of the fact that the Prime Minister's personal rating had been a drag on Josh Frydenberg's vote, that Josh Frydenberg himself remained quite popular. The Prime Minister was anything but, particularly in that seat. But I'll go further than that to say the various other issues that have been pushed in this campaign, like Matt Canavan talking about net zero is dead, like the suggestion of the threat of war and so on in the region, those sorts of comments will go down like a lead balloon in Hawthorn and Kew and Kooyong, that seat.
Yeah, look, I think that we probably do need to look at our messaging. Most important thing now, I think, is to, we had... Hang on, let me take a step back. We had the most difficult 3 years where we essentially had to veer away from our principles in order to save the nation. Everything was put aside, including even parliamentary process was put aside to do what it is that we needed to do. Now, I think we've come out in a very strong position on the other side, but now we have to come back and say, well, we really now need a strong Liberal voice. The country needs a strong Liberal voice. We need to be socially progressive at the same time as economically conservative. We've got to bring back those principles that, dare I say, Tony Abbott was very good at. He was very good at articulating freedom, choice, personal responsibility, reward for effort, the power of small business, the importance of aspiration, the primacy of families. All of that sort of stuff is where we need to come back to. What are those principles, Jane, in which we make policy?
Isn't part of the problem that there's some within your party still holding on to this halcyon days idea of the Howard Conservative? The electorate has changed. The definition of a Conservative now is not of that Howard era. It has evolved, and your party doesn't seem to have evolved with it. Look at these independents, including Daly. There is no mistake. It is not by coincidence that these are all strong, smart women. Some of the Liberal Party's most ardent supporters say you don't have a women issue. I disagree on this result alone. I mean, separate from the Brittany Higgins issue and the complications within the parliament, you've just lost 6 seats with the next generation of women in them. And there's something in your party that doesn't speak to women. Some of these Teal independents on paper are Liberals. Why aren't they in your party? There's something wrong with the branches. There's something in the way you select your candidates, and there's something in the way, something that you're not doing that's not attracting these women. You're not speaking to them.
Which frustrates me greatly because, I thought that this was the election where we were going to bring a whole new generation of women into Parliament that were going to make an incredible contribution in places like Dunkley and Corangamite. I'm very pleased that Zoe McKenzie did get up in Flinders. She will make an enormous impact. But there were so many good women that were running this time around that haven't had a chance to serve. That doesn't say they won't have a chance in the future.
Jane, I've got to ask about the approach to China. Now, Shane Wright from 9 Newspapers has just tweeted the swings from WA. The WA massacre. Canning, 7.3%. O'Connor, 9.3%. Durack, 9.9%. Burt, 10.1%. Freo, 10.4%. Brand, 10.5%. Forrest, 10.8%. Moore, 11.3%. Hasluck, 11.8%. Perth, 12.7%. Tangney, 13.3%. Swan, 13%. And Pearce, 15. It's unbelievable. I wonder how much this sabre rattling with China helped with WA. I wonder, it certainly didn't help when it came to Bennelong, Reid and Chisholm. It might not have helped in the Teal seats. And I never really understood it in the sense that it's important to stand up against autocrats. It's important to work with the United States to stand up against autocrats. But why hold a press conference every second week saying we're standing up to autocrats unless you are essentially trying to win domestic votes. I mean, you know, we're the little kid in the schoolyard and they're this massive bully and we keep shaking our fist at them under Scott Morrison. Does there need to be a rethink about how the Liberal Party tackles the whole China issue?
Well, we probably need to rethink the language, but I think it was very important that we did stand up to China's particularly economic coercion. To some extent, I think Australia is the canary in the coal mine, not just in our region, but also globally. And there is going to be a whole paradigm shift that we need to deal with. And it was important to step up and do that. I'm very proud that we were a brave enough country and a brave enough government to do that. But one of the things that was interesting about the China effect was the effect on the Australian Chinese community too. I heard some news from one of our candidates in, I won't say which seat actually, who'd done some polling in Cantonese and Mandarin. And they said that the one thing that had really turned the Chinese community away from the coalition was not necessarily our strong stance on China, but some of the messaging that had been used, in particular the words drums of war, because drums are in fact used in celebration in China as opposed to threat. Now, that wasn't actually a government member, that was a public servant that used that phrase, but that did reflect on us.
And the language stand up to China, not stand up to the Chinese, Communist Party.
That's very much. We need to, look, I think, to be fair, I think Scott Morrison made that distinction many times.